Today, we're going to take a look at the U.S. Senate prediction for the month of October. And I was really close to making about 4 or 5 changes, but in the end, I actually only made one. This is not the final prediction map. We've got a month to go. There's plenty of debates coming up. Everything is starting to take shape. So this is when everything really starts to matter. I'm prepared to make more changes as we get more polling and we see how these campaigns finish heading into November. So let's get started with the safe states. These are expected to be over 10-point margins and not really at all competitive. Now, some of these are complete slam dunks, like Hawaii, Washington, California, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware, and then independent senators who caucus with the Democrats, Bernie Sanders in Vermont and Angus King in Maine. We're going to color those blue. Those should be easily way over 10 points. And the last safe state is going to be in the middle. It's going to be Minnesota. This one could be a closer race for Amy Klobuchar than her previous landslides. But I don't think Royce White is going to be able to get it down under 10. Maybe it's only 11 or 12, but either way, Klobuchar should get this safe. Now, several of these were borderline, and they might go safe on the final map, but for now, there's just a little bit of caution. Now, let's do the safe states for the Republicans. And keep in mind, they need to flip one seat for a 50-50 tie, or 2 seats if Harris happens to win the presidency. And they're going to get that first flip in West Virginia that's not controversial. This is the Joe Manchin seat. It's current Governor Jim Justice running to take his place. Even with Manchin, I think Justice would win, but this is going to be a flip and a safe pickup for the GOP. Now, the other states that should not at all be competitive are going to be Utah, Wyoming, North Dakota, plus Indiana, Tennessee, and Mississippi. Is there a chance Jim Banks in Indiana or Marsha Blackburn in Tennessee wins by under 10? Yeah, there's that possibility if something emerges in the final few weeks, but for now, it's more likely that those stay over 10. Now, let's look at Missouri. This is Josh Hawley against Lucas Coons. Dems would love to take out Hawley, but the state has just gotten too red. Now, this is another one that might not be way over 10 points, and if Coons has a great night, this could come down under 10. For now, it's just too red and it's going to stay safe. Now let's look at Nebraska. We've got 2 elections here. The regular election is Deb Fischer and Dan Osborne. The special election is former Governor Pete Ricketts against Preston Love. That's to finish the remainder of the Ben Sasse term. We'll come back to this in a minute, but for now, the special election, that's going to be the circle. That's going to be safe for Pete Ricketts. Now we'll do the likely states. And these are expected to be between 5 and 10-point margins or have an outside chance of being competitive. And we'll go right back into Nebraska. And this is the change that I made from the previous month. It's incumbent Republican Deb Fischer and independent candidate Dan Osborne. We're going to need multiple high-quality polls out of this state. So far, we've pretty much only gotten partisan polls. The ones behind Dan Osborne do show him very competitive, even in the lead in a couple. The one I saw from Fischer's campaign showed her in the lead by a massive margin. She easily won by double digits last time, and I know Democrats are fired up. They think that there might be a way to take out Fischer through Osborne and potentially have a de facto type of pickup. Of course, Republicans think that this is all just a lot of hype. At this point, I do tend to think it's more hype than not. It is a red state. Trump is expected to win it easily by a safe margin. And in the other election, Pete Ricketts is also expected to win by a very comfortable margin. But Osborne is an independent candidate, so that does have some allure prior to an election. Deb Fischer herself is also not the strongest candidate. I did a recent deep dive on this race, and my best guess is that on election day, the lean of the state will carry Fischer to victory, potentially even by a safe margin. But for now, out of caution, because we're not exactly sure what we're getting here, I will take this from safe down to likely for Fischer. It's a race to follow in the home stretch. We're going to see if there's any late movement. Now, the next likely state for the Republicans is going to be Texas. This one I was very, very close to taking down to leans for Ted Cruz over Colin Allred, but I've kept this at likely for a very long time. I think right now it's right at about 5 points. If Cruz did not win, I think that would be a massive upset, but there's also no guarantee he's going to win by more than a couple of points. So I get if you have this at leans, but I'm going to keep this at likely at least until we get into the final few weeks. And the other likely state is going to be Florida. This is Rick Scott at another borderline rating. For a while I had this at leans for Scott. I eventually took it up to likely, but it's just over the line, probably about 5.5 points. Scott has won some narrow races in the past, and Republicans had a ton of success here just a couple of years ago. But I don't think Scott is the strongest candidate, but the lead of the state should at least give him a win. But it's another one to keep an eye on. I would hope Rick Scott does at least one debate, just like Deb Fischer should in Nebraska. For now, I'm going to keep this rating at just into likely territory. Now, the likely states for the Dems. Let's look at New Mexico. This one is borderline likely safe. It's Martin Heinrich and Nella Domenici. Her last name carries a lot of weight in that state. That might be enough to keep this under 10. In Martin Heinrich's 2 previous wins, he topped out at only 54%, although last time it was a 3-way race. So it's not really competitive. I could go safe, but I'm going to keep it just at likely. Now, back on the East Coast, we've got New Jersey. This is Andy Kim and Curtis Bashaw, or Bashaw. Shaw. He is the more moderate candidate for the GOP. Plus, it's an open seat, so it should be a little bit more competitive. And it's also the old Bob Menendez seat, and he, of course, is scandal-plagued. So I think there's just enough here to not have full confidence at putting this safe. Kim's going to win it, and in the end, he could win it by 12 or 13. But there's enough factors here to keep this at likely, at least for the time being. Then we've got Maryland, and there's another one that's very, very borderline. I could easily put it at safe. It's also Brooks and Hogan in an open seat. We all know the story that Hogan has been very popular, winning 2 terms as governor in this deep blue state. But this is the Senate. It's a totally different race. It's going to be a lot harder. Even though Hogan's going to run well ahead of Trump at the top of the ticket, it doesn't seem like he's going to be able to pull off the miracle of a flip here. So the question is, how far is he going to get from it? In the end, it's probably going to be low double digits. But again, I think there's enough here to not indicate that it's a landslide. Let's see what happens at the end. We're going to keep this just into likely territory. Then south of there, we've got Virginia. This is Tim Kaine and Hung Kao. Kaine is running for re-election. He's the heavy favorite. Maybe in the end he does win by 13 or 14. But I do want to see what kind of movement there is in this state as we wind down this campaign. So it's borderline, but again, I'm going to keep this at likely. The last likely state for the Dems is going to be Pennsylvania. This one is on the other end. It's borderline late likely. I've got it at about 5.5, maybe 6 points for Bob Casey, the incumbent Democrat. In this state, the Casey name does carry a lot of weight. McCormick, I think, is doing a little bit better than I had expected. So this could come down to leans. If somehow there's a big red wave, maybe this has the potential to even flip. But for now, I'm going to keep this just over leans and put it at a likely rating. Now we've got the lean states. These are going to be under 5 points, but more than 1 point. For the Democrats, let's start in Nevada. This is Jackie Rosen and Sam Brown. Most of the polling has been very favorable for Jackie Rosen. On paper, this should be reasonably competitive, but so far it looks like Sam Brown is not really delivering the goods. It's another one to watch in the home stretch, but for now, this is going to go leans for Rosen. Next door in Arizona, we've got the open seat between Ruben Gallego and Kari Lake. Here, Gallego, again, has been favored consistently. Lake might be too controversial for a win here, but immigration is a key issue, and it's going to be very competitive at the top of the ticket. Gallego looks like he's in position to easily run ahead of Harris. So we'll see what happens, but this is going to be leans for Gallego. Then we've got the Rust Belt states. In Wisconsin, it's Tammy Baldwin and Eric Hovde. I think it's an uphill climb for Hovde, but he's doing a little bit better than I expected. There should be a debate coming up. We'll see if that changes anything, but this is going to stay lean D. And next door in Michigan, it's an open seat, and it's Alyssa Slotkin and Mike Rogers. It's another one where the Dems have the advantage, but it's possible Rogers could flip this in the right circumstance. The final month is going to be critical in all these lean states, so this rating is going to stay leans. And then we're going to go to Montana. This is a big one between Jon Tester and Tim Sheehy. The polling over the last couple of months has clearly favored Sheehy. I'm not completely counting Tester out in this. He's won tough races before. He's trusted. He's been relatively popular. Even though Trump is easily going to win the state at the top of the ticket, Sheehy is hoping that that'll carry him over the finish line. I think it will, and Sheehy has been a stronger candidate than I expected maybe about 6 months ago. So this rating is going to stay leans for the Republicans, and it's going to be another flip and a pickup. The last state is Ohio. This looks like it's going to be the most competitive state. It's Sherrod Brown and it's Bernie Moreno. Brown is looking for term number 4. When Moreno won that primary, it looked like he was not going to be the strongest candidate. I think he's needed some time to get his campaign going and his name ID up. I've been anxious to see what he's going to do in the final stretch. And this is another one where Trump should win the state easily at the top of the ticket, but it's not as red as Montana. Without Brown, this would likely be a flip, but as of the recent polling, he's not hitting 50%. He's not even really hitting 49 or 48. So there's room there for Moreno to take this if he wants it, but I don't think I can make the flip just yet. It might happen on my final map, but for now, I'm going to leave this as a tilt for Sherrod Brown. Clearly, that means it's going to be super competitive, and it could go either way. So the final map comes out to 51 seats for the Republicans and 49 for the Democrats. So the next seat to flip, I think, would be Ohio. After that, Democrats might be looking at Texas or Florida. I think if they're overly ambitious, they're going to be thinking about Nebraska. And for Republicans, they're hoping they can work some magic in Wisconsin or Michigan, potentially Nevada or Arizona. On a great night, we might be talking about Pennsylvania and the other likely states of New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, and New Mexico. 1 or 2 of those may get under 10, but I think it's just way too much of a reach to think those could potentially flip even in a red wave. And plus, you never know, maybe a place like Missouri gets down under 10. So there's a lot to take in here. Everybody's going to have their own map and their own reasons behind their ratings, but it's not early anymore. We've only got about 1 month to go before the final prediction comes out. So until then, let me know in the comments, how does your map look in early October? Would you take Texas down to leans? How about Florida? What do you think about Ohio, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Montana, or any of the other states? On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.